Send a notice out. One second. Notice sent out. Check to see if we are actually streaming. We are. All right. Good to see everybody. And we're going to get started. Actually, one thing I forgot, it's either today or yesterday. Today or yesterday was the Vyasapuja celebration of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So we're going to speak about him for a few minutes, but first we'll chant Vaishnava Vigyapati, which is about glorification of Vaishnavas. So in honor of Tamal Krishna Maharaj's Vyasa Puja. Okay, so let's get the guitar. Baro Karuna Goro Vaishnava Goswami Matita Pavana Toma Vinege Baro Karuna Goro Vaishnava Goswami Atita Vanatoma Vinege Jarane Gate Gele Mona Dayala Prabhu Kiva Kota Jaharani Kate Kele Apature Mona Dayala Prabhu Kiva Kota Gangarapura Sohile Maschate Bhavan Dashane Petra Koro Edo Gangarapura Sohile Maschate Dashane Pavitra Koro Edo Adistane Aparate Hare Hare Thomas Dane Aparate Nagi Parage Adistane Aparate Hare Way Namora Vaishnava Paradan Tomara Hridoya Santa Govinda Vishra Govinda Govinda Mora Vaishnava Paradan Pratijan make Koryasa Charanera Tule Naratame Korodoya Panara Pratijan make Koryasa Charanera Naratame Korodoya Vanarabo Evaro Murakoro Vaishnava Gotsai Patita Manatoma Vine Keona Evaro Guruna Koro Vaishnava Gotsai Patita Manatoma Vine Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadwaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopikapanath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavadam Ki Jai Mathuradam Ki Jai Jagadada Sami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nivashesha Shanyavadi Paschachate Shatarne. So let me read this translation of this poem. And as I mentioned, today we are commemorating or celebrating the appearance day of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he was my very good friend, and so that's why we chanted this prayer to the Vaishnavas. So on Vaishnava, oh Vaishnava Goswami, please be merciful to me now. There is no one except you who can purify the fallen souls. Where does anyone find such a merciful personality by whose mere audience all sins go far away? One becomes purified after bathing in the waters of the sacred Ganges many times. but just the sight of you purifies the fallen souls. This is your great power. The holy name delivers you, or delivers one who has offended Lord Hari. But if one offends you, there is no means of deliverance. Your heart is always the resting place of Lord Govinda, and Lord Govinda says, the Vaishnavas are in my heart. I desire the dust of your holy feet in every birth I may take. Please consider Narottama yours and be kind upon him. So today, as I mentioned before, we are commemorating the appearance day of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and I was with Tamal Krishna Maharaj a few hours before he left this world in Sri Dham Mayapur in 2002. We were actually planning to take the same taxi together to Calcutta, to fly out of Calcutta. And so I decided to take an earlier taxi, since I usually like to be really early for my plane flights in case things happen, especially in Bengal. Things do happen. And so on that morning, of course I flew to the United States, but on that morning, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, there was a car accident in which Tamal Krishna Maharaj was in, and he left this world, and then they had the Samadhi ceremony in Sri Dham Mayapur, and I found out about it when I had arrived in the United States, and then right after that I flew to Fiji to be with his disciples and to share with them and help them in whatever way I could. So my remembrance of Tamal Krishna Maharaj is, for many years we were on the GBC together, and his determination was so great that whatever opinion he had about a particular issue on the GBC or voting like that, he was able to sway the rest of the GBC members. I remember even one time he was wanting to sway all the GBC members, and they didn't want him to sway him, so they asked him to turn around because he had this piercing glance that made you want to do what he said. He definitely had this, it's called Mridanga Yoga. When someone enters the room, it's like someone's playing a mridanga, and definitely he was put in this world to serve His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, because he joined the Krishna Conscious movement in very early years, 1968, in New York, in the early days, and he was accepted by Srila Prabhupada as a disciple in San Francisco, and immediately he manifested himself as a leader, and in many different ways he manifested himself. Srila Prabhupada depended on him in so many different ways. First of all, to develop the programs in India. Then when Prabhupada got upset with the devotees who were not properly respecting him in the United States, Prabhupada left the United States and he called for Tamal to be with him. So Prabhupada had this most intimate back and forth relationship with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was probably the only one who could advise Srila Prabhupada. And of course he always followed the etiquette in dealing with Srila Prabhupada, and he had so much love for His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In addition to establishing everything in India, he established centers in the UK and France, the United States, and of course he's very famous for starting the Radha Damodar Party and distributing hundreds and thousands or millions of Srila Prabhupada's books all over North America with the traveling bus party. And he started preaching what was I going to say? In China. He was the one who actually inaugurated the preaching in China, and today we have literally thousands and thousands of devotees because of Tamal Krishna Maharaj's great service there. So around 1995, he decided to go back to the university to finish his university studies, and he attended this university called the Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. So that's interesting, a Hare Krishna devotee going to a Methodist university, which is a Protestant university. And as he went there, he would dress in a dhoti, like a silk dhoti, full devotee regalia, or full traditional regalia. And he was very much respected. In '98 he graduated, and then he went to the University of Cambridge, where he studied a PhD program, and he was working on his dissertation, and he was awarded his PhD, as we say, posthumously, post-samadhili, because in 2002, in March 15th, he left this planet. And his samadhi is actually placed right next to Srila Prabhupada's samadhi in Sri Dham, Mayapur. So let's see, what else can I say about him? And he published many, many different books. And here's the list of the books. Servant of the Servant, which is about his interactions with Srila Prabhupada. Drama of Lord Jagannath, which is Jagannath Priya Natakam, which is a beautiful play about Lord Jagannath. And then the final pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada had Tamal Krishna Maharaj by his side during the final years in Tamal. He was depending completely on Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Tamal Krishna Maharaj loved Srila Prabhupada so much that between him and Bhakti Chur Maharaj, they took care of all the needs of Srila Prabhupada. Another book, Yoga for the New Millennium, Song of God, Reason and Belief. A Hare Krishna at Southern Methodist University, which is really interesting. TKG's diary about his interaction with Srila Prabhupada, and a living theology of Krishna Bhakti. He was very, very demanding with his disciples and very, very loving with his godbrothers. I remember him sometimes sitting down and taking prasadam with him, and he was the best host, basically. But he would insist that his disciples served everything perfectly from the correct side of the person whom they were serving, and everything had to be specifically at a specific temperature, cooked properly, or else he would send everything back to the kitchen and chastise the disciples. So he was very, very piercing, very, very determined to serve Srila Prabhupada. And every minute I was with him, he just manifested his determination to serve Srila Prabhupada, and we miss him dearly on this particular day. So all glories to His Holiness, His Divine Grace, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So let's go on to the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. All right. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we just got finished reading about Ramchandra Puri, who basically offended his spiritual master Madhavendra Puri and became a critic of all the Vaishnavas, and he even criticized Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reduced his eating. Finally, for the glory, all the devotees were very happy when he left Jagannath Puri and no longer harassed the devotees. So anyway, so that was chapter 8. So chapter 9, let's see, okay, let me just write that down, it was yesterday. Chapter 8, and then chapter 9 is entitled The Deliverance of Gopinath Patanyayaka. So the 9th chapter is summarized as follows. Gopinath Pattanayaka, the son of Bhavananda Roy, was engaged in the service of the government, but he misappropriated some funds from the treasury. Therefore, the Bada Jana, the eldest son of King Prataparudra, ordered that he be punished by death. Thus, Gopinath Pattanayaka was raised on the Changa to be killed, but by the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he was delivered. Moreover, he was even promoted to a higher post. Okay? Aganya Danya Caitanya Gananam Prema Vanyaya Ninye Danya Jana Swanta Marushasvat Anupatam. The innumerable glorious followers of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu brought a constant flood to the desert-like hearts of the unfortunate with an inundation of ecstatic love. Wow. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Daya Maya Jaya Jaya Nityananda Karuna Ridaya. All glories to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the most merciful incarnation. All glories to Lord Nityananda, whose heart is always compassionate. Jaya Dvaitacharya Jaya Jaya Dayamaya Jaya Gaura Bhaktagana Savarasa Maya. All glories to Dvaitacharya, who is very merciful. All glories to the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are always overwhelmed by transcendental bliss. E Mata Mahaprabhu Bhaktagana Sanghe Nilachale Vasakarena Krishna Prema Range. Thus Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lived at Nilachal, Jagannath Puri, with his personal devotees, always merged in the ecstatic love for Krishna. Wow. Antareva Hare Krishna Viraha Taranga Nanabhave Vyakula Prabhura Mana Ara Anga. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always felt waves of separation from Krishna, externally and internally. His mind and body were agitated by various spiritual transformations. Indine Nricha Kirtana Jagannatha Darashana Rachiye Raya Sarupa Sanay Rasa Ashvadana. During the day he chanted, danced, and saw Lord Jagannatha in the temple. At night he tasted transcendental bliss in the company of Ramananda Roy and Sarup Damodar. Sri Jagat Teraloka Asi Karena Darashana Ye Deke Sepaya Krishna Prema Dana. People from the three worlds used to come visit Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone who saw him received the transcendental treasure of love for Krishna. Manushera Veshe Deva Gandharva Kinara Sapta Patalera Yata Daicha Vishadhara. The inhabitants of the 7 higher planetary systems, including the demigods, the Gandharvas, and the Kinnaras, and the inhabitants of the 7 lower planetary systems, Patala Loka, including the demons and serpentine living entities, all visited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the dress of human beings. Wow. Saptadvipe Navakande Vaise Yata Jana Nanaveshe Asikare Prabhura Darashana. Dressed in different ways, people from the 7 islands and 9 khandas visited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Palada Bali Vyasa Syuka Adi Muni Gana Asi Prabhu Deki Preme Hayatha Chaitana. Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Vyasadeva, Shukadev Goswami, and other great sages came to visit Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Upon seeing him, they became unconscious in ecstatic love for Krishna. Wow! So all these devotees came. According to the opinion of some historians, Prahlad Maharaj was born in Treta Yuga in the city of Multan in the state of Punjab. He was a Punjabi. He was born of Hiranyakashipu, a king of the dynasty of Kashyapa. Prahlad Maharaj was a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, but his father was very much against Vishnu. Because the father and son thus differed in their consciousness, the demon father inflicted all kinds of bodily pain upon Prahlad. When this torture became intolerable, the Supreme Lord appeared as Nrsimha Deva and killed the great demon Hiranyakashipu. Bali Maharaj was the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. The son of Prahlad Maharaj was Virochan, and his son was known as Bali. And Bali's son was Banasura. But anyway, appearing as Vamana and begging Bali Maharaj for 3 feet of land, the Lord took possession of the entire 3 worlds. Thus Bali Maharaj became a great devotee of Lord Vamana. Bali Maharaj had 100 sons, of whom Maharaj Bana was the eldest and most famous. So that's Banasura, who fought with Krishna. Vyasadeva was the son of the great sage Parashara. Other names for him are Satyavattiya and Krishna Dvaipayana Badurayana Muni. As one of the authorities in the Vedas, he divided the original Veda for convenience into 4 divisions: Sama, Yajur, Veda, and Atharva. He is the author of 18 Puranas, as well as the theosophical thesis Brahma Sutra, that's known as the Vedanta Sutra too, and its natural commentary, Srimad Bhagavatam. He belongs to the Brahma Sampradaya and is a direct disciple of Narada Muni. Shukadeva Goswami is the son of Vyasadeva. He was a brahmachari fully conscious of Brahman realization, but later he became a great devotee of Lord Krishna. He narrated Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. Bahire Punkari Loka Darshana Napana Krishna Kaha Balena Prabhu Bahire Asya. Being unable to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the populace outside his room would make a tumultuous sound. Thus Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go outside and tell them, chant Hare Krishna. So in other words, that's how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt with the general mass of people. He said, chant Hare Krishna. He didn't get into the esoteric bhavas and the aspects of relationship with Krishna, like he did with Swarup Damodar Goswami and other close associates. Ramananda Roy, Sikha Mahiti's sister. He didn't get into that with everybody. Mainly he encouraged people to chant the Lord's holy names. Prabhupada Darshane Savaloka Preme Vase Ematayaya Prabhupada Ratri Divase. All kinds of people would come to see the Lord, and upon seeing him, they would be overwhelmed with ecstatic love for Krishna. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passed his days and nights. Ekadina Lokasi Prabhure Nivedila Gopanath Pere Bharagjana Change Chitaila. One day, people suddenly came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and informed him, Gopinath Patanayaka, the son of Bhavananda Raya, has been condemned to death by the Bharajanga, the eldest son of the king, and has been raised on the Changa. So Prabhupada is going to explain what the Changa is here. The Changa was a device for killing a condemned person. It consisted of a raised platform on which the condemned was made to stand. Underneath the platform, there were stationary upright swords. The condemned man would be pushed down onto the swords, and in this way he would die. For some reason, Gopinath Patanayaka had been condemned to death and had therefore been raised upon the Changa. Oh my God. Capital punishment. Tale Kadga Pati Tari Upare Daribe Prabhu Raksha Karena Yabe Tabi Nishtaribe. The Bharajana has placed swords beneath the platform, they said, and will throw Gopinath upon them. O Lord, only if you protect him will he be saved. Sabham se tamara sevaka Bhavananda Rai Tanra Putra Tamara Sevake Rakite Yuyaya. Bhavananda Rai and his entire family are your servants. Therefore it is quite fitting for you to save the son of Bhavananda Roy. Prabhu Kahe Rajakene Kare Tadana Tavi Se Lokakae Sabavivarana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired, why is the king chastising him? Thereupon the people described the entire incident. Gopinath Patanayaka Ramananda Bhai Sarvakala Hayatena Raja Vishayi. They said Gopinath Patanayaka, the brother of Ramananda Roy, has always been the treasurer for the government. Mala Jatya Dandapate Tara Hadikara Sadipadiyani Dravya Dila Rajadvara. He served in the place known as Malajatya Dandapata, soliciting and collecting money there and depositing it in the government treasury. Dwi Laksha Kahana Tara Tani Baki Haila Dwi Laksha Kahana Kori Rajata Magila. Once when he deposited the collection, however, a balance of 200,000 kahanas of conch shells was due from him. Therefore the king demanded this sum. Tena kahi stula dravya nahiye gani diva krame krame vechi kini dravya badiva. Gopinath Pattanayaka replied, "There is no money. I can immediately give you cash. Please give me time. Gradually I shall purchase and sell my gross goods, and this way fill your treasury." Godadasha Barahaya Lahamulya Kari Etavale Goda Ane Rajadware Dare. There are 10 to 12 good horses. Take them immediately for a proper price. After saying this, he brought all the horses to the door of the king. Eko Rajaputra Godara Murya Bala Jane Tare Pataila Rajapatra Litrasane. One of the princes knew how to estimate the price of horses very well. Thus the king sent for him to come with his ministers and friends. Say Rajaputra Mulya Kare Gatanda Gopinath Karoda Haila Mulya Shuniya. The prince, however, purposefully gave a reduced estimate for the value of the horses. When Gopinath Pattanayaka heard the price quoted, he was very angry. Say Rajaputra Swabhava Griva Piraya Urva Mukhe Barabara Iti Uti Jaya. That prince had a personal idiosyncrasy of turning his neck and facing the sky, looking here and there, again and again. Tari Nindakari Kahi Sagarva Vachane Raja Kripa Kari Tate Vayanahi Mane. Gopinath Pattanayaka criticized the prince. He was unafraid of the prince because the king was very kind towards him. Amaragoda Griva na Piriyai Urve Nahi Chaya Tate Godara Mulya Gati Karite na Yuyaya. Gopinath Pattanayaka said, "My horses never turn their necks or look upward. Therefore, the price for them should not be reduced." In other words, he was saying my horses are not like the prince here, who has this idiosyncrasy. That's an insult to the prince. Shuni Rajaputra Mane Krodopa Jila Rajarataniai Bahu Lagani Karila. Hearing this criticism, the prince became very angry. Going before the king, he made some false allegations against Gopinath Pattanayaka. Kodi nahi dibiye vedaya chadmakari adadehak yadi change chadana laki kodi. This Gopinath Pattanayaka, he said, is unwilling to pay the money due. Instead, he is squandering it under some pretext. If you issue an order, I can put him on the changa and thus realize the money. In other words, threaten him with death. Rajabale ye bala sekara yaya yeyupaya kodipai kare kara iseupaya. The king replied, "You can adopt whatever means you think best. Any device by which you can somehow or other realize the money is all right." I guess the king wasn't thinking about it too much when he said that to him. Rajaputra asi tare change chadaila kadaga upare pelaite tale kadaga patila. Thus the prince went back, raised Gopinath Pattanayaka onto the platform of the changa, and spread swords below upon which to throw him. It's pretty scary. Shuni Prabhu Kahi Kichu Kari Panaya Rosha Raja Kodi Dite Nare Rajara Kibadosha. After hearing this explanation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied with affectionate anger, "Gopinath Pattanayaka does not want to pay the king the money that is due," the Lord said. "How then is the king at fault in punishing him?" So Rajavilat Sari Kaya nahi raja bhaya, dari natuyare, diakare nana vyaya. Gopinath Patanaik is in charge of collecting money on behalf of the government, but he misappropriates it. Not fearing the king, he squanders it to see dancing girls. Oh. Ye chatura se guruka raja vishya raja dravya shodipaya tara karuka vyaya. If one is intelligent, let him perform service of the government, and after paying the government, he could spend whatever money is left. So you can see there's another reason why Gopinath Patanaik is being chastised, because he is engaged in sense gratification, and he is dear to Lord Caitanya, and his whole family is dear to Lord Caitanya, and Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu wants to give him a good scare, so he stops doing this nonsense sense gratification, dancing girls. Hena kalayara loka ailadana vaninatari swava she lanagela bandiya. At that time, another person came there in great haste, bringing the news that Vaninath Rai and his entire family had been arrested. And they didn't do anything. This prince, he was just really vengeful. Prabhu kahe raja apane lekara dravya lahiba ame virakta sannyasi tahi ki kariva. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the king must personally realize the money that is due, but I am but a sannyasi, a member of the renounced order. What can I do? Tabe surupari yatta prabhura bhakta gana prabhura charane sabe kaila nivedana. Then all the devotees headed by Swarup Damodar Goswami fell at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and submitted the following plea. Ramananda Raya Ragosti Sabatamara Dasa Tamara Uchita Nahi Aichana Udasa. All the members of Ramananda Roy's family are your eternal servants. Now they are in danger. It is not befitting for you to be indifferent to them in this way. Shuni Mahaprabhu Kahi Sakroda Vachane More Gyadeha Sabeyana Rajastane. After hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke in an angry mood. You want to order me to go to see the king, he said? Toma Savara Imata Rajatani Hana Kodi Magi Lanmuni Anchala Patya. Your opinion is that I should go to the king's palace and spread my cloth to beg money from him. Panchagandhara Patrahaya Sannyasi Brahmana Majile Vakini Dive Dvilakshakahana. Of course, a sannyasi or Brahmin may beg for up to 5 gandhas, but why should be granted the inappropriate sum of 200,000 kahanas of conch shells? Hena kalayara loka ailadana hadegara upare gopinate diteche dariya. Then another person came with the news that Gopinath had already been set up to be thrown upon the points of swords. Shuni Prabhura Gana Prabhure Karya Nu Naya Prabhu Kahi Ami Bhikshuka Amahai Te Kichu Naya. Hearing this news, all the devotees again appealed to the Lord, but the Lord replied, I'm a beggar. It is impossible for me to do anything about this. Takte Raksha Karite Yari Hayasavaramane Sabi Meli Janaha Jagannatera Charane. Therefore, if you want to save him, you should all pray together at the lotus feet of Jagannath. Ishvara Jagannatha Yanrahate Sarvaharta Kartum or Kartum Anyata Karite Samartha. Lord Jagannath is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He possesses all potencies. Therefore, he is able to act freely and can do and undo whatever he likes. Ihanyari Mahaprabhu Eteka Kahila Harichandana Patrayai Rajayare Kahila. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied in this way, an officer named Harichandana Patra went to the king and spoke with him. Gopinathana Paitanayaka Sevakatumara Sevakera Pranadanda Nahi Vyavahara. After all, he said, Gopinath Pattanayaka is your faithful servant. To condemn a servant to death is not good behavior. Visheshataharatani kodi baki haya prananile kiva kalava nijadana kshaya. His only fault is that he owes some money to the government. If he is killed, however, what profit will there be? The government will be the loser, for it will not get the money. Yathartha mulye godak laha yeva baki haya krame krame dive vyartha prana kene laya. It would be better to take the horses for a proper price and let him gradually repay the balance. Why are you killing him unnecessarily? Rajakahe evatame nahi jane prana kene laiva tara dravya chahi ame. The king answered in surprise, I do not know about all this. Why should his life be taken? I only want the money from him. So it really wasn't that conscious when the Bhadajana, his son, actually told him about this whole thing, the plan to put Gopinath Pattanayaka over the Changa. Tumiyai karatan sarva samadana draviyachaya sayara rahitara prana. Go there and adjust everything. I want only the payment, not his life. Tabi harichandanasi janara kahila changi haite gopinate shigra namaila. Harichandana then returned and informed the prince of the king's desire, and immediately Gopinath Pattanayaka was taken down from the Changa. Javyadeha rajamage upaya puchila yathartha mulye godalaha tena ta kahila. Then he was told that the king demanded the money due him, and asked what means he should adopt to pay it. Kindly take my horses, he replied, for a proper price. Krame krame dimuara yata kichu pare avichare pranalaha kibalite pare. I shall gradually pay the balance as I can. Without consideration, however, you are going to take my life. What can I say? Yatarta mulya kare tabe saba goda la ila aradravyera mudati kare gare patayla. Then the government took all the horses for a proper price. A time was set for payment of the balance, and Gopinath Pattanayaka was released. This is by a reflection of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Eta Prabhu se manushere prashna kaila vaninatha kikare yave bandya nila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired from the messenger, what was Vaninath doing when he was arrested and brought there? Say kahi Vaninatha nirbhaya laya Krishna nama Hare Krishna kahi avishrama. The messenger replied he was fearlessly, incessantly chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sankhya lagi dvihate angulite leka, sahasrade purnahaile ange kate reka. He counted the chants on the fingers of both hands, and after he had finished chanting 1,000 times, he would make a mark on his body. Wow. Shuni Mahaprabhu Haila Parama Ananda Kevu Shite Pare Gorera Kripa Chanda Banda. Hearing this news, the Lord was very pleased. Who can understand the mercy of the Lord upon his devotees? Hena Kale Kashi Mishra Aila Prabhu Stane Prabhu Tanre Kahi Kichu Sodvega Vachane. At that time, Kashi Mishra came to the residence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Lord talked with him with some agitation. Ihan rahite nare yamu alalanata nana upadrava ihan napai soyata. I cannot stay here any longer, the Lord said. I shall go to Alalanatha. There are too many disturbances here, and I cannot get any rest. Bhavananda Raya Goshti Kare Raja Vishaya Nana Prakara Kare Tara Raja Dravya Vyaya. All the family members of Bhavananda Roy are engaged in government service, but they spend the government's revenue in various ways. Rajada Kidosha Raja Nija Dravya Chaya Dite Nare Dravya Danda Amare Janaya. What is the fault on the part of the king? He wants the government's money. However, when they are punished for failing to pay the government its due, they come to me to release them. Raja Gopinate Hare Change Chadaila Charivare Loke Asi More Janaila. When the king put Gopinath Patanayak on the Changa, messengers came 4 times to inform me about the incident. Vikshuka Sannyasiyami Nirjanavasi Amaya Dukkha Deha Nijas Dukkha Kayasi. As a beggar, sannyasi, a mendicant, I wish to live alone in a solitary place, but these people come to tell me about their unhappiness and disturb me. Ajitare Jagannatha Karila Larakshana Kali Ke Rakibe Yare Nadive Raja Dana. Jagannath has saved him once from death today, but if tomorrow he again does not pay what he owes the treasury, who will give him protection? The Supreme Personality of Godhead will certainly protect the devotee who does something sinful accidentally, as the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 9:30-31. Apichet suracharo vajate mamananyavak sar eva samantavya samyag vyavastito isa. Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvachantim nigachati kontiye patichani hiname bhakta pranashati. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. However, if a devotee or so-called devotee purposefully commits sinful activities continually in the hope that Krishna will give him protection, Krishna will not protect him. Therefore, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kaliye ke rakibe yare nadive rajadana. Jagannath has saved Gopinath Patanayak from being killed by the king today, but if he commits the same offense again, who will give him protection? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus warns all such foolish devotees that Jagannath will not protect them if they continue to commit offenses. This is a very important point. Prabhupada actually at one point said if there's an accidental deviation, then it's forgiven, but premeditated is something different. Prabhupada also gave you the example one time. He said just like in American baseball, 3 strikes you're out. In the same way, you do something, okay, Krishna forgives you. Do the same thing again, okay, forgiven. 3rd time, you're not so sincere, you got to suffer the reaction for it. So that's a really important instruction from Srila Prabhupada. So, of course, if we commit sins on the strength of chanting the Lord's holy names, it doesn't work insofar as purifying us from the reaction of those sins. Vishayirav, that's actually one of the offenses. Vishayiravarta shune kshubda hayamana tataihan rahimora nahi parayojana. If I hear about the activities of materialistic persons, my mind becomes agitated. There is no need for me to stay here and be disturbed in that way. Kashi Mishrakai Prabhura Tariya Chadane Tumikane Evatek Shobakara Mane. Kashi Mishra caught hold of the Lord's lotus feet and said, why should you be agitated by these affairs? Sannyasi Virata Tamara Kaksane Sambana Yavahara Lagi Toma Vaje Se Jana Anda. You are a renounced sannyasi. What connections do you have? One who worships you for some material purpose is blind to all knowledge. And Prabhupada explains, becoming a devotee of the Lord to serve material purposes is a great mistake. Many people become show bottle devotees for material profits. Indeed, materialistic persons sometimes take to professional devotional service and keep Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as a means of livelihood. None of this is, however, approved. In the book known as Sapta Shati, as mentioned by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, one can discover how a person worshipping the goddess Durga begs her for different varieties of material profit. But such activities are very popular among people in general, but they are the attempts of foolish blind people, say Jana Anda. A materialist does not actually know why one should become a devotee. A devotee's only concern is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotional service is defined by Srila Rupa Goswami, Anyabilashita Shunyam Gyanakarmanavritam Alukuyena Krishna Krishnadushilanam Bhakti Rutamam. That's the nutshell verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11. One should be completely free from all material desires and should serve Krishna simply to please him. When people become interested in their own sense gratification, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, some of them desire to enjoy the material world to the fullest extent, some of them desire to be liberated and emerge in the existence of Brahman, and others want to perform magic through mystic power and thus become incarnations of God. Phew. These are all against the principles of devotional service. One must be free from all material desires. The desire of the impersonalist to merge into the existence of Brahman is also material, because such an impersonalist wants to gratify his senses by merging into the existence of Krishna instead of serving his lotus feet. Even if such a person merges into the Brahman effulgence, he falls down again into material existence. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32, Aruya Krishrena Param Padam Tata Patanchado Nadratat Yudhishmad Angraya, famous verse. Because the Mayavadi philosophers have no information regarding the transcendental service of the Lord, even after attaining liberation from material activities and merging into the Brahman effulgence, they must come down again to this material world. So we're going to end there. So today we did first verse to 68 in this chapter. 1 to 68 chapter now. So now we can take some questions. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to unmute you. As we say, allow you to unmute yourselves. Okay, does anyone have any questions about this story about Gopinath Patanyayaka, Vaninath Roy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the king, the Badajana, the king's son? You can raise your hand.
Hi, Gurudev. I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Do we know which one of the Pandavas Gopinath Pattanayaka is an incarnation of, or expansion?
I do not remember. I do.
I don't think I've ever heard.
No, I don't think I've ever heard either. Because Vaninath Roy, the father, was Pandu, and we all know that Ramananda Roy was Arjuna. So
Right.
I don't know which ones of the other ones were actually which Pandavas.
So my next question would be, how is it that one of the Pandavas would be going to see dancing girls?
They're Kshatriyas. Anyway, the Kshatriyas, they did that. I mean, they sometimes. I mean, even in Dwarka, they had dancing girls performing. I mean, not illicitly or anything like that. So, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas have different rules. You'll have to ask them why they would go to see dancing girls. It probably wasn't Bharatanatyam. But the king definitely had dancing girls before him. I mean, there was different entertainment. It was the entertainment. It's not that they were engaged in illicit life, but it was more like sense gratification. So you
So I
have
guess
to.
the issue wasn't so much necessarily that he was seeing dancing girls, but that he was being irresponsible with money.
You're
That
being irresponsible with money, yeah. And also that he was going to see dancing girls, and he was Lord Chaitanya's devotee, and Lord Chaitanya expected a little bit more from his pure devotee than that. I think it was dancing girls too. Not that he was breaking the regulated principles, but he's spending money on sense gratification. So that's prohibited. Spending money for pure Vaishnava. Okay.
Gurudev,
okay, thank
so,
you.
All right, Pranesha, you have a question.
yes, I'm sorry, Gurudev. Actually, I joined very late and just traveling to my hometown to meet with my mother.
You're on a train.
Yes, in train.
Train in India. That's pretty good. So what's the question?
So, Gurudev, like how, like that. This is my general questions. It's not to the class.
All right. What's the question? Uh-oh.
Like what is when we deal with them, then they said like, I don't want anything, but they have something in the mind, I get something, and so like, they could not express in the beginning what I want, but at the completion of the work and at the end they expect something. So how to deal with them?
If we're dealing with someone who wants something, they can't express what they really want, how to
Yeah,
deal with
they could not express in the beginning of the
who?
work,
Who?
but
Who? Who are
they
you
say,
talking?
"Okay, I don't want anything and don't want anything," but at the end of the work they expect something there.
Well, we just have to sit down with them and ask them to be honest.
Okay,
That's it.
but
That's the just sit down and ask them to be honest, and you can detect if someone's being dishonest with you, and just ask them to be honest.
yes,
Good to see you on the train, Indian train. That's pretty cool. All right,
yes,
so just one other question. Brajali is asking a question. What does it mean to sin on the strength of chanting? That means one uses the chanting. That's an expression that Prabhupada gave. One uses the chanting to excuse sinful activities, thinking, it's all right, I'm chanting. And I can do all sorts of sinful things too, because every time I chant, it gets rid of all the karma, bad karma, good karma, so, it's just like, it's fantastic, I can do bad karmic things, and then, Hare Krishna! Smoke some ganja, Hare Krishna! What else? Drink some liquor, whatever you're going to do. Hare Krishna! So that's, because we know the chanting, even Namavas chanting, relieves one from karma, different type, parabdha karma, aparabdha karma, kuta, bija. But if one makes a deliberate decision to keep performing vikarmic activities and thinking that the chanting is going to, purify him or her, that's what it means to sin on the strength of chanting. Good question. So, any other questions before we end? Actually, it was a good question. Sin on the strength of chanting. That's how Prabhupada explained it. I would say sinning, thinking that one can be excused by chanting, would be actually to unpack Prabhupada's statement. Thinking that and using the chanting to get out of one's reaction, the karmic reaction. So, if there aren't any other questions,
and Gurudev, like to know the arrival to Govardhan.
yeah. What about Govardhan?
Yes, the date for arriving.
I'll let you know when I'm going to go to Govardhan. Praneshwar is doing a whole preaching center there at Govardhan. He purchased some land right on the Parikrama path, and he's building something to give the people Krishna conscious, ISKCON Krishna conscious, and help the people who are already Krishna conscious at Govardhan, but help them connect with His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, and know Srila Prabhupada's glories, and distribute books and distribute prasadam at Govardhan. So he's doing an amazing project. Pranesh is a really good devotee. He's going to visit his mother in Bihar right now, and he's on the Indian Railway system. Very nice. Okay, so we're going to end now. Thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.